Hey, welcome to Live from the Backseat, brought to you by GetStation.com.
Okay. Yes?
Yes. I was like, what happened?
I've been trying to like figure out how to like make sure it works the whole morning. So I'm like, yes.
Is this your first like Zoom like interview?
Yeah, usually I've been doing normally I try to do it in person if I can, and then I've been doing like phone calls, but I was like, let me just go ahead get Zoom because it looks like everything's about to be like no seeing anybody. So
That's so true.
Yeah, but this is good, and I made like my closet into a small studio because
I love it. I was just
like
the
the
podcast Instagram page like a few minutes ago. It's dope.
How are you?
I'm good. Life is so different now, obviously. So I live in LA.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I'm from Chicago, but I live in LA now. I'm getting my doctorate in organizational leadership.
I saw. Congrats. It's amazing.
Thank you.
I definitely want to talk about that because that's cool.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm doing that. That's why I'm here. I'm also engaged. So my fiance is a touring musician. So he just got off the road with the Jonas Brothers like a couple of months ago. Mm-hmm. So our life is like, it's always like, it's crazy.
It is crazy because it's like, I was thinking about it the other day, like recently, I was just like, wow, like times move so quickly. You know what I mean? Like we were at Hampton, what seems to be not that long ago, but now it's just like everybody's life is so like just different, and people are getting married and having kids and all these like amazing things, and it's just it's very cool to see how everything's changed. For all my listeners, today I have Arquillia Burks, soon to be Mrs. Martin, and I want to talk about that too. But yeah, I just this is like she's basically let me see if I get this right. She's an investor and a manager. So she, as she said, she's doing a lot of different things. So I thought this would just be a cool conversation for you guys to listen in on, because I'm always looking to ask questions to anybody who's willing to like, talk to me. So it's cool. I definitely okay, one, you said your fiance is a touring musician and like you were just on tour with the Jonas Brothers. Just since that's just came up, let's just talk about that, because that's definitely something I wanted to ask about. Like, how did you get into managing artists, and yeah, just like how'd you get into that, and what's that been like for you?
Yeah, so I think probably a year ago. So I've always pretty much considered myself to be very self-aware. So when I moved to LA, I said, I need to make sure that my life has some alignment. I knew I wanted to be a mom. I knew we were going to get married. And I wanted to make sure that my day-to-day was fun and profitable, but I'll still be able to do things that I love. I did not think I was going to be an artist manager at all. So I thought my relationship with the music business was going to be like just at the extent of like music executives. I was applying for jobs, didn't hear back from anyone. I think I applied for like over 100 jobs in the music industry, didn't get anything back. So,
what were you trying to like what were you trying to do in the music industry originally, and like
PR, advertising, and
okay,
anything in the like on the executive side or anything that's closer to the artist, I wanted to do that. I didn't get anything back, so I started having like just more conversations, just hanging around Calvin and his work environment a lot more. And then his friend actually called me, very random. I was leaving class one day and he called and he was like, hey, I just want to talk to you about music. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm thinking it's going to be like social media management kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then he just flat out asked me to be his manager. So I was completely like, I was floored, not because I thought I was incapable, but because I had never saw myself doing that. So I was like, oh, like you want me to manage you? Like I know nothing about music managing. Like this is going to be a thing. I do have a music background, like from a creative perspective, but I hadn't really done it from that lens before. So I was kind of nervous. So we're actually in the process. He dropped a song a few weeks ago called I'ma Need You. We're dropping new music again next month in May. And then we're also going to be auditioning for NPR and some other small projects coming up. So that's super exciting. His name is Jay Black. So you can follow him at Jay Black's World.
Okay.
And he's on all digital platforms. So yeah.
That's awesome. You said you had a music background. I don't. You used to sing, right? Or you still sing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Me and singing, it's crazy. Like, I was always singing. I've been singing since I was a little girl, but I don't sing anymore. So I feel like I get to be like a business leader, but like manager, and like kind of like still get my creative feel in without having to be on stage, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's cool.
Where did your love from singing come from, like growing up and stuff? Because I do remember that about you, I was like, that you could sing.
I love music. I would have to say probably my family, because my mom sings, my dad sings, my brother plays drums, he plays keyboard, he plays organ, he plays trombone, like in college for a scholarship. So my entire family is like super musically inclined. And I always laugh with Calvin because I dated an athlete in college. So I was like, yo, I'm not dating any more athletes, no more musicians. I don't want to date anyone in the limelight. But it's just crazy that I end up doing that anyway. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yes, that actually is when you think about it. I always think it's funny because I feel like sometimes when we say like, oh, I am never, I am not, I am, God's like,
you are.
Okay, we gonna talk about that. Back in 5 years because we're gonna talk about that
every time. Every time.
That's why, like, now I'm like, let me just never say never, because like,
no.
I'm like, it's very likely that if I say never now, I will contradict myself later down the line.
Yep. Eat those words for sure.
Okay, you met Calvin. That's your fiance. For everyone, that's her fiance. You met him through your brother, right?
I did. Yeah.
Can we talk about that? Because that is super
like. So okay.
That's crazy.
Crazy part of my life. And this just really goes to show that being the right person will bring you the right person. Because I think sometimes we always focus on like finding the right person, when in reality, you shouldn't be finding the right person, just be the right person. And whoever you are, you're going to attract that very same thing. So Calvin and my brother, so Calvin obviously is a drummer. My brother is also a drummer. So they went to college. While they were in school together, they became really close friends. My brother was kind of like serving as a mentor to Calvin because my brother is 6 years older than I am. And my brother never told Calvin that he had a sister. So fast forward to 5 years into their friendship, and Calvin now sees me tagged in a picture with my brother on Facebook. Yeah. So Calvin calls my brother and he's like, who's this woman? This isn't your wife. This isn't your mom. Like, who is this? So my brother, it's my sister. He was like, yo, can I take her on a date? Now, how crazy is it that your brother, a man calls your brother and asks your brother to take you on a date? So from then on, he kind of like had me a little bit because I was like, yo, this is extremely not regular. Like, this is
that's super like old school.
Isn't it? Like,
it is. It's cute now. I like it.
It's crazy. So when that happened, it was really like, my brother was like, yeah, Calvin wants to take you on a date. I'm like, okay, cool. You can give him my number. I was real indifferent about it. And then we went on a few dates, and then Calvin moved to LA. So when Calvin moved to LA, we kind of like just split. We were no longer dating. We were like kind of like friends. I actually started dating someone else. He was dating other people. And then probably 2 years later, 2 years later, so 2017, Calvin came home to Chicago. So when he came home, he has his own band, Peace Band. They were having a performance. So I pulled up to the performance. We have been talking every single day since that day.
Wow.
That was May 30th, 2017.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's cute. I love that because that really is like some old school. You don't hear that normally. Like, especially, also, it sounds crazy, but girls even like trusting their brothers to be a picker of like anything. Because you hear a lot of girls like, I will not date my brother's friend.
Yes, exactly. Yes. When someone told me, they were like, yo, it's kind of like an arranged marriage. I was like, it kind of is. I
don't think those are the worst ideas in the world.
I know.
I'm like, sometimes I'm literally like, I remember calling my mom once, like, I should have just said yes to the arranged marriage. I was tripping. I was immature and did not know what I was getting myself into. You were trying to save me. Clearly, I was wilding, Mom. Sometimes I'm like, you know what? Maybe life would have been easier that way because you don't have to figure it out. Because I think that's something that's like, you know, jokingly but truthful, like dating in itself is like, can be stressful and is complicated and confusing. And like, I think particularly in today's day and age, we have all these like weird rules and things. So it's like you crack dating, but then like relationships in themselves are this whole new different ball game. And it's like, okay, wait, like like I'm in that now where I'm just like, fuck, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I think it's like very interesting because as every stage is like its whole different own thing, and then getting to, you know, where you are now, where you guys are engaged and you're getting married, I think that's super awesome. Something about your guys' relationship that I've definitely, like, when I started seeing it, I was like, oh, this is so cute, and then I was like, let me follow along here. I was like, oh, this is, let's see more. Something that I really like though is that like you guys seem to have God as a center in your relationship, and like it's really been like that's been a big strength for you guys getting to where you are with being this happy couple that's engaged and, you know, starting on this new journey of life together. I kind of wanted to talk about just like about that aspect of your relationship and kind of how that came about and how you guys do that together, because that's definitely you hear everybody be like, you need to pray with your spouse, you need to do that, you're not even your spouse, your boyfriend, and it's like, okay, but y'all gonna tell us how? Like, anybody gonna give the secret?
Such an excellent point. I think I probably hear people say, oh, you should be praying with your boyfriend once a week, like, or more on Instagram, wherever. But I never hear the second part. And I think I'm going to start from the very, very beginning. So first things first, to just break the ice, I was nervous to pray with Calvin the first time we prayed together. And I think people don't talk about that. Usually your relationship with God is a very intimate thing, and it's usually just between you two. So when you're already like in a relationship, it's new, it's fun, and you're getting to know that person, sometimes it feels kind of like very vulnerable. It's kind of naked to just be like,
definitely.
We pray together. Like some people have not prayed aloud, you know, often. Yeah. They're just like super uncomfortable in that space. So I think for me, one, God is most definitely in the center of our relationship. Going back to the very, very beginning, I would have to say that when I was praying, I manifested Calvin 1000%. I didn't know that he was going to be my brother's friend. I didn't know that. Simone, I wrote it down in my journal in like 2015, right when I left Hampton. I knew the next phase of my life, the next 5 years, like I was like talking to God about it. Like, I really don't know what I want to do as far as my career is concerned, but I knew that I wanted to have a family. I knew I wanted to have a legacy. I knew I wanted to have children. I knew I wanted to like build something very similar to my parents. That part I was clear about, but I didn't know who and I didn't know how. So I wrote it down, and I didn't write like a height or race or anything. I just said, I want to be with a man who loves God more than he loves me. That was extremely important to me. And I'm going to tell you why. The reason why I wanted to be with someone who loved God more than they loved me was because I knew that the pain and the toxic traits that could have happened, he would be too afraid to feel the wrath of God that he wouldn't want to hurt me in that way.
Yeah.
So if you don't have your own personal relationship with God, it's kind of hard to have one in a relationship. Like both parties have to have their own individual relationships with God. And then that way, when you guys come together, it's a level playing field. It's not like this.
Yeah. You know? I think that's so important that you mentioned that, because I always say that couples need to be evenly yoked, and that doesn't just mean like financially or, you know, we match, you know what I'm saying? Like we look so good together. We're so like, it's not about being the same person, but it's about complementing each other, but also bringing to the table, like, even on the foundation things, the moral things, the value things, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's a mistake women and men alike make so often, where it's like, you know, I'm on this spiritual journey and I'm building this relationship with God, but then you think picking up somebody who doesn't even want to know God is somehow going to serve you and that mission. I think it kind of plays into for women particularly our saving narrative and need to, I'm gonna save him. He gonna do right because he loves me and whatever, but it's like that becomes so draining on you. And I think that definitely even something I found in my own journey is like, I love how you said you wrote it down and you manifested him, because that's something I literally like tell people all the time. Like, you have to really you have to seriously know what you want before you go looking or even judging anybody, because you don't even know if you like him or not if you don't know what you want. Like,
Simone, that's such a good point, because in order to do that, you have to know yourself.
Right.
You have to be self-aware enough to recognize, okay, this is who I am, and this is the direction I'm going in. This is the kind of man. This is the kind of godly man that I want. Because ultimately, this is what I found out. Calvin and I have gone through the things that have happened in my life since our relationship started have been, Simone, things that have broken me to the floor. Like, the first year of our relationship, this was the first year or the second year. Like, going into the second year of our relationship, my dad was on ICU. He was in ICU and he was pronounced dead, like in the hospital.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, they were resuscitating him for about 17 minutes, and they got him to, got his heart back pumping. And I just remember how I felt in that moment. I'm the ultimate daddy's girl. I was completely broken. I was like borderline heading toward depression and anxiety and didn't even realize it. Yeah. And it took Calvin to recognize that I was not myself for me to realize that I wasn't myself. Yeah. And I often tell him that I probably, because sometimes we think about like, yes, we have God, but in our moments of weakness, you have people that God sent.
Yes.
Those moments, Yeah.
And I often say your blessings, or at least in my experience, blessings come to me through people, through interactions with other humans, through God taking another person and being like, this person's gonna be your blessing today. Like, this is how I'm gonna do it. Or me being used in that way of like, this is how we gonna get somebody good today. Like, and I think that's so, like, it's so important to recognize that. It's like so important about who's in your life, because either they're gonna be used for blessings or they're gonna be used by the devil for lessons.
And it's no in between. And it just needs to be said, it's no in between, because the things that I experienced, and him as well, like we both experienced some really low lows, and since being in our relationship, and we always thank God that we have each other, because it just would not have been good. We both lost our grandparents a few months ago. So I lost my grandfather in October, and then Calvin lost his grandmother a couple of months ago. Obviously, we're all experiencing the effects of COVID-19. So our wedding was planned to be April 25th. Now our wedding has been pushed back to August 15th. So the changes that we've seen, it just really puts everything into perspective. It really does. And you'll start to see, you have to go through the hardest times in life with a person to really understand the love that you have for them, with them, because of them, etc. Like, without being able to get through those tough patches, like it means nothing, because anybody can be with me at my best. Yeah. Anybody can be with you at your best. That's easy, but it's very hard to love someone when they thought they were this close to losing the closest person on earth to them. It's really hard to love someone when they're not themselves, Yeah. So I think that's so important to touch on. I'm happy you said that. 1,000%.
How do you guys, and I know it's unique to every couple and to every person. I'm super interested in I'm currently finishing up a book on dating, and just kind of like loving yourself, but like, this is how to date, not like a crazy person, because you love yourself. This is how to make better choices for yourself. And it's all just stuff that like I learned myself and like worked on through therapy that I'm basically just showing other people. But so I'm super obsessed with like relationships and dating, and not even just romantic, but like I'm really obsessed with interpersonal relationships, which is probably why I do this podcast. Because it's an opportunity to be obsessive about that shit. But you know, it's different for every couple, but I do want to know, like, how do you guys get through those tough times? And particularly for you as a woman, how did you differentiate between, how have you learned to be discerning, to differentiate between, okay, this is like, when it came to Calvin saying, like, this is somebody worth fighting for, this is somebody worth standing by, this is somebody worth going through tough times with,
I love this.
versus somebody who it's like, this is not worth my energy and I'm not going to walk through hell and fire for you. Because I think for a lot of women particularly, it's so hard to be discerning. And it's something like, I know for at least myself, like I've had to, over the years, like I had to make it a point to learn to be discerning. And it took me years of practicing being discerning and like fucking up sometimes and then doing better another time, and like to learn to actually like have this like, okay, this is that, this is this. So how did you come to that?
I think for myself, it's been a long ongoing process of self-awareness. And I keep going back to that because if you don't know yourself, you can't get the other stuff done in the appropriate way. So I have non-negotiables. Going back to the dating phase, before there was any rings, before there was any talk about marriage, there were some non-negotiables that I had, you know, just while dating. And for me, my non-negotiables were, are you a Christian?
Mm-hmm.
But not just like a churchgoer, like not just like putting on clothes and out of routine going to church every Sunday, but are you trying to live right? Like, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis for you? Because I've been with churchgoers. It didn't work for me.
Yeah.
I knew that there's a difference, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not being judgmental. What I'm saying is that at the time, the place that I was in my life, I was on a very intentional spiritual journey.
Yes.
And for starters, when Calvin and I met, I remember we were on a date, and I said, we were talking about like sex, and I said, yeah, I'm actually practicing abstinence. And prior to that date with Calvin, there were like other people that were like looking at me crazy, like, no, like,
wow, this was a great time, but I gotta go.
Like, yeah, but I gotta go. And then, or they would try to like bargain with me, like, if you do this, we can do that. And I was like, but I just told you, even if you weren't there spiritually, just out of respect, just listen.
No, that's a huge red flag. I don't think some people understand how, like, one thing I've learned, when you tell somebody your boundaries and they then try to negotiate with you on your boundaries, I said what I said. So the fact that you're trying to negotiate with me shows me off bucks. You don't really respect me, because if you respected me just on a basic human level, you're not gonna be like, oh, I'm not, you know, like, I'm not comfortable doing this. And it's like, okay, but like, what if, no, you gotta go. It's fine. Just exit.
You have to.
That's so funny to pick up on, because I think when,
that
happens in small ways throughout relationships, or just in dating and in life in general. And I think it's so interesting how, like, when you are practicing abstinence, and you say that, how to see how people react, because that's kind of like a big thing, you know. It's like, to people, sex in a relationship is big, and I mean, rightfully so. Sex in a relationship is important, and what you're doing with it is up to you. But I think it's so interesting how, like, if you say that and somebody reacts in a good or bad way, especially early on, that's a teller.
I have this theory, like, sex is very important in relationships. Number one, I completely agree with that. But I think that the conversation about sex and the act of sex, it has its place, meaning if it happens too soon, before you get to really know that person, like, it's just it opens up a whole nother can of worms. That's something sometimes people just are not ready for. So I feel like when you're trying to build up your arsenal to be more discerning, it's important that you're being self-aware.
Yes.
Because self-awareness is going to help you to very quickly identify what's right, what's not right, what's a red flag, what's not a red flag.
And discipline.
It's okay to move forward.
Yeah, and also disciplined, because when you're learning to be discerning, like, at least for me, a lot of the issue was me. It was not other people. Like, I was the problem. It was me being like, but I'm impulsive and it sounds fun.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you know what I mean? And then like literally knowing like, okay, but you're going to be impulsive now and this is going to be fun for a moment. And then 2 hours later, you're going to hate life. So like, or even if it's not 2 hours, even if it's like, I'm going to date this guy now because this seems like a fun time. It's like, but we all know that in 6 months, like you're going to hate life. It's fine. Like, let's not do this. And then in me being learning to be discerning, I had to really learn to be disciplined, which was really for me, like learning the highest act of self-love was to sometimes say that like, this is just not the moment for this. You know what I'm saying? And like, and not being swayed by other people's feelings on what I feel is necessary for me to do for myself.
Yep. I really have it's almost like a mantra. How you do anything is how you do everything. So like, and I'm not gonna like segue into Watch Her Win just yet, but how you do anything is how you do everything. And I think for me, Watch Her Win is my attempt to help win holistically. Not just winning in relationships, not just winning spiritually, not just winning in finances, but winning in them all. Because life is really, my mom always says this, life is a huge balancing act. Mm-hmm. And it takes like a great level of self-discipline to really acknowledge like, okay, I'm doing amazing in these areas of my life, but I really want to grow in this area of my life. Like having that conversation with yourself is the first step to seeing some, personal development. Yeah. And that's where those like, because women, we're just, oh my gosh, I talk about this all the time. Women, we are amazing creatures. The intellect, the logic, the rationale behind the things that we do and say sometimes is so next level. I'm just like amazed to be a woman. So I feel like those acts of like doing everything that we just talked about will naturally build the discernment up. It's naturally going to happen because you're going to be able to say like, and I say this with grace because I recognize that when we're in different parts of our life, you don't have to be a particular age to experience certain things. So it's really just based off of your life experience. Like, what have you seen in your life to get you to this place? So I think that for me, I've been through a lot, like over the last 7-8 years, things that have really forced me to be more self-aware and forced me to be more self-disciplined and to really put the brakes on my own stuff. Like, hold on, this isn't working for me. I need to make sure that I'm doing X, Y, and Z for myself. And then everything just kind of like started to get better because now I'm sure. It's like walking around whole or walking around broken. When you're walking around broken, you're kind of like looking for small things in whatever ways you decide to fill those voids. But when you're walking around whole, it's like walking around with a great sense of who you are, a great head on your shoulders, like
a sense of purpose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
No, that's big. That's very big. I also, I'm definitely a believer in manifesting your life and your reality and also just like having a vision, because when you don't have a vision of who you want to be, where you want your life to go, what you think you should be doing, like that's when you're just open up to anything. And you're just open to, so I love how you said when you started dating Calvin, you were very intentional because while I think that there's definitely a time in life where you do just need to kind of go with the wind, and so you can, especially when you're young, to just kind of figure out who you are and what you like and don't like, and you need experience to know things about yourself. That's how you get that insight. But I do think that once you get to a point in your life where you kind of have this vision, it's so important to be intentional, even in your dating life, because if you're not, you open yourself up to a lot of stuff that you don't want to deal with. But I think a lot of women are scared of being intentional sometimes. And that's something I see a lot. I see a lot of women who pretend to be very like, and even sometimes I have to make sure myself I don't get caught in it of like, oh, I'm going with the flow. No, fuck you. No,
Yeah.
I'm not going with whatever flow you set upon this earth for me to go with. And I think that like women get worried about being intentional or letting it be known that they're intentional sometimes, because it's like you're that crazy girl thing, you know, like,
it's fear.
oh, she wants you to marry her now, like,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Exactly. It's like
no, maybe she's just telling you what she wants in general.
General.
She didn't even say she chose you. You know what I mean? Like, she's just saying what she wants down the line. That does not mean she even said that she wants you to be that guy, you know? So how did you cope with that though?
I'm not too far away from like being single that I don't remember what that feels like. I remember, Simone, being on dates, and if I even said the word marriage, it was like the whole room stopped. I was like, what? But I'm just, I'm on a date with you. You're getting to know me. I'm telling you that I desire to be married, but I never said that I desire for you to be my husband. And I think sometimes when men hear, oh, she wants to be married, they're actually hearing in their head, she wants me to marry her. And that's not what she's saying. What she's saying is that she has had a conversation with God and herself, and she desires to be married. That's a desire of her heart. It doesn't mean that you're the guy. So that's such an important part, because that to me is also a red flag, you know? I think sometimes, now don't get me wrong, there are cases where women are very pushy. Women can be very like, this is what my timeline is, X, Y, and Z. You should meet this timeline. And I don't believe that. I think that things should happen organically, because a man that loves you doesn't need any of your help to go buy a ring and get on one knee. He doesn't.
A man who loves you doesn't need any of your help to do, like, to figure out, he doesn't need like a guided fucking instruction handbook to you. No. Like, if you have to tell him every single thing, that's a problem.
A godly man really doesn't need your help, because he already got permission.
Yeah.
He already got permission. So if he's talking to God, Calvin, I asked him, like, how did you know I was your wife? Like, what made you like so sure? Like, how did you just know, like, I'm getting a ring, I'm getting on one knee? He talked to God about it.
Yeah.
He didn't talk to me. He didn't talk to me. When I knew that Calvin was my husband, was not the same time that he knew that I was his wife. He knew that I was his wife way before, you know? So I think to answer your question, like going back to that life and those feelings of like being single and having those conversations, I definitely remember feeling sometimes like kind of like less than, almost like I couldn't be myself.
Right.
I'm just talking about my desires, but you're uncomfortable that I even said the word marriage. So now I'm uncomfortable on this date. And now I kind of think it's childish in a way. If you can't have a conversation with someone about their views, and, you know, especially in dating, because dating is not, you're not married to anything or anyone. You're just like, it's just conversation. So yeah. I think if you're not willing to listen and be receptive to something different or new, I probably wouldn't go on a second date with that person.
How early in your and Calvin's relationship, like, did you make your intentions known? Was that like something you did up front of like, hey, I'm an intentional person, and like, these are my standards, this is what I'm hearing? I mean, clearly not in like a like, this is what I'm telling you to do. Sure. But like, did you make that known up front, or did you kind of like ease into that as you guys got to know each other more, as the relationship got along? Because I think that's timing is a big thing with that also. I think a lot of times, another thing I see with women particularly is we'll try to be like, go with the flow at the beginning in hopes that then we'll get into a relationship. And then either that doesn't happen. He's like, I thought you was chilling, and now you like, why are you mad at me? You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times guys are in trouble for shit they didn't do. They're in trouble for shit that's one of us made up in our heads, and then got mad for him not reading our minds, and like not knowing what we wanted in a sense. And then I also see women who will like be one way before a relationship, and because that's what they think they have to be to get into the relationship. And then when the relationship comes, the man feels like, okay, she's flipping the script, I'm overwhelmed, all this is changing, because all of a sudden she goes from like super chill, I don't want anything girl, to like, I need the world on a silver platter and I need it fucking 2 hours ago. And he's like, 2 weeks ago,
that's not what you said.
You had paper plates and you were cool. I'm confused. You know what I mean?
No, it starts with honesty, number one. Everything that you just said, I think when women are in those kinds of situations, they're not being honest with themselves. So I actually posted this a few days ago. Our society makes every population of people feel bad at some point in the day. You have, if a girl gets engaged, you have people who are obviously like supportive and happy for her, but then you'll have the subliminal beatings like, oh, I'm just gonna be the fine auntie, y'all can have these husbands kind of conversation. But you may actually be a person who desires to be married, but instead of just like having that conversation with someone who is currently engaged or who is currently married, you take the back road, or like, it's almost like an underhanded compliment to yourself. And I think it all starts with honesty. Be honest about what you want. In the beginning, to answer your question about timing and like, when did I say X, Y, and Z, my standards across the board, no matter if you go back to X's 5 years ago, has been the same. They'll all say the same thing about me in that sense. However, as I got older, I became wiser about when to say certain things, when it was more appropriate, when it was more needed, at that time. So for me, in my relationship with Calvin, the only thing that I remember really kind of establishing, if you will, in the beginning was that I didn't want to have sex. That was the first thing. I wanted to just get to know him. That was the second thing. And also that I was very focused on what I was doing. I don't even think I said I'm looking for a relationship. I think I was being very just honest about where I was currently at that moment. And then he did the exact same thing. And it honestly worked out because, like I said, we dated for we went on 5 dates, and then he moved to LA. And then I was dating other people in Chicago. He was dating other people in LA, etc. And then we came back 2 years later and never looked back. So timing really is everything, because we would not have the relationship that we have now had we tried to pursue that relationship when he left for LA. Because sometimes when relationships start at transitions, one or two things can happen. You can ride off into the sunset, or you just killed it before it even got started, So just having a good understanding of when it's the best time to do and say certain things is super, super important. But I think I want to talk about standards for a little bit, because this is really important to me.
Standards are, if you don't know your standards, you don't know anything about yourself, what you want, you'll accept anything. Standards are the golden. Please. Yes.
Standards are the most important part about dating. Hear me again, ladies. Standards are the most important thing about dating, because it's almost like a rule book for yourself to remind yourself that you're breaking the rules. So of course, the person that you're looking at is then too breaking the rules, because you're not modeling the behavior you want to see. Ultimately, as a woman, I think sometimes women, we're just so loving and nurturing, and we tend to we can be a little lenient sometimes when we fall in love. And by lenient, I mean see the red flags and ignore them over and over and over again, but then expect something different to happen. When it's okay, I'm not saying there has definitely been times where I probably overreacted about something, for sure. And it to me, I feel like it's a response to maybe some trauma I dealt with before. And I have to be woman enough to say, I'm sorry, I overreacted about this. That's really not what I meant. This kind of triggered me for X, Y, and Z reasons, which happens sometimes. But when I'm talking about establishing standards, that has to be an honest conversation with yourself in the very, very beginning before
Yeah.
you even go on the date.
Yeah, before you even meet the man, you need to know what your standards are. I completely
1000%.
agree with that. Yeah. I think I talk about that a lot in the book I'm writing, that like you have to know your standards. You have to know what your emotional needs are and what your standards are before you even start trying to pursue anything serious or fun, because that's how you stop. That's how you make sure you're still loving yourself. You have to honor yourself. And I think a lot of times when we're lenient and we're like, it's either because we don't know or because we don't love ourselves enough, so we're willing to sacrifice so we can have that feeling of love, because we're unsure that we can actually provide that feeling for ourselves. And I think that I love how you said, you know, you've always had your standards, even though there hasn't always been times where you've honored them. And I think that really resonates with me, because I think that's so true for so many of us. Like, I think as we get older, we feel like we're like finding our standards or learning our standards, or it's really like, you probably knew this is what you wanted all along, but when you're young, you want to seem a certain way and be a certain way, and you're not really sure how to react and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And that's really your whole life you're learning. But if standards really like guide you, and I cannot stress how much standards are important, only for the fact that also something you said that I really loved when you said you were writing it down right after you left Hampton about what the man you knew God had for you looked like, how you didn't add in anything superficial, how you didn't add in, he's gonna be this guy, he's gonna be like
this, I had it in my head.
But it's so important, because so many women, I think that's something that I always try to stress when we're talking about standards, is that like you have to really know yourself and know, like, your man may not come in the package you thought he will come in. That's just life, okay? And that's not even just your man. Anything you're like, we could completely remove this from relationships, and just for men and women, like when it comes to manifesting what you want in this life, you cannot be looking for a specific package. God rarely sends perfect packages. So if you're trying to manifest something and you're like, God is going to come in this package that I have detailed, very, very detailed for you, okay? This is not build a bitch or build a nigga workshop. You cannot do that. Like, and I think a lot of times I see that's something I definitely see with a lot of women. And I was actually at an event recently that we held for another podcast on the network. It was a live interactive dating show, and somebody brought up the question of women settling. And that's something that I kind of then left and thought about a lot, because I remember being a single woman and feeling like a lot of women in relationships had to be settling.
Yeah.
I also know what it's like to be in a relationship and not be settling. You know what I mean? And it kind of was interesting to be in this new perspective for me, and to then sit and take that away and resonate with that. Because I think when you don't know what your standards are, and you have this long list of, it's like a fairy tale wish list to Santa of just, he's gonna make this much money, and he's gonna be this skin color and this height, and he's gonna have sex like this and a body like this and a drive this car. It's like, girl, God is probably not gonna send you that, and you're gonna miss something real good for you, because of the packages coming in, or how it's coming to you, or when it's coming to you, when, really you just have to trust in God's plan when it comes to anything in life. And I think with manifestation, people who often think that it doesn't work and think that like, have the perspective of a lot of people are just settling, it's like, well, it looks like settling to you because you don't see that she actually knows at core what she needs. And so the fact that some superficial, frivolous icing on the cake want isn't being covered doesn't mean she's settled for less.
No.
She's just has a base of needs and standards that can guide her and can, because you'll meet a guy, and I think it's the reason I say that is because particularly when it comes to dating, we'll meet guys who have like 3 things off of our wish list and be like, girl, let me tell you, he's the one, okay?
Right?
Call
Right?
your girlfriend, your mama, everybody like, girl,
This
I done
is
met my
it.
husband. This
Yes.
is it. And it's like, is it? Because you don't really have standards. You just have a list of 100 things, some great, some superficial, some here or there, just a list of things. And like, he has 3 things out of that list, but like, you really have these 10 standards and these 10 basic needs, and he's hitting 2 of them, but somehow he's the one. So now you've convinced yourself that you need to somehow work with him because he has these 2 things you like, but it's like, he doesn't have anything you need, you know? And it's not about people being bad people. It's just about like people being mismatched for each other. And even for men too. Like, I see men do this a lot too. We're like, but she does this and she's great at this. I'm like, but you also have 5 other needs that need to be fulfilled that like, I don't think this is it, bro. You feel me? So I love how you said standards are important because that's so true.
Compatibility is a close second, because what you just said about, you have some things that I like, but you don't have the things that I need. At some point in that relationship, you have to face the music. Like, you're not going to be able to run away from it. You know, I think sometimes people, and I'm going to talk about marriage a little bit when I say this, but my mom gave the perfect example. When you're talking about marriage, you're talking about an entire lifespan. An entire lifespan. Not 2 years, not 2 great years, not 1 bad year, an entire lifespan. So it's important that the good always outweighs the bad. That is, I'm not walking into marriage thinking it's going to be easy. I'm not walking into marriage thinking that every day is going to be roses and he's going to have rose petals all over the living room floor. I'm not expecting that. Like, some days, the best thing that you can do for me is wash the dishes because I'm tired.
Yeah.
You have to be able to speak that person's love language in order to be able to do those kinds of things. And I think we should just throw away with the list. I think the list should just like go out the window altogether. And I think you should go back to your standards and your non-negotiables, because that's what's going to really get you the relationship that it's going to be healthy and it's going to be purposeful. It's going to be fun. It's going to be like,
and fulfilling.
It's very fulfilling. Like, God could not have given me a better person to do life with. Could not.
Well, especially because when I think about like my life in general, and I think about things that like really bring me joy and make me happy and feel close to God and fulfilled, and just like, it's not always stuff that I originally would have picked if I was going off of my wish list, you know? It's things that have helped me and grown me and made me feel good in life are also things that, like, if you would have asked me years, months, whatever, I would have been like, fuck it, I'm never gonna. Like, I would have been tripping. Like, I'd be like, hell no, I'm not doing that. You feel me? And like, but it's been being able to like know, once I started really knowing what I needed, that's when I started to be able to guide and I started to be able to judge stuff and be discerning better. Cause it's like, okay, like I have a meter to weigh stuff on now. Like I got these, I literally break it down to like an inventory. Like I have these and I like go through every few months in my relationship, like, is this being checked off? Is this, where are we at with this? How do I feel about this? And like, almost like a rubric. And it's like, it sounds crazy, but it actually helps me like,
no, it doesn't
in my own head and get caught up in anything.
It doesn't sound crazy, because I think sometimes when relationships starts, you have the dating phase, it's super fun. You're so like oohs and ahs about that person. The relationship starts, but then you kind of like slide into that, I'm comfortable here, like everything is going good, but we forget to maintain what we were doing before in the relationship while the relationship is like happening. And we also forget that the maintenance has to be ongoing. You don't stop. So Calvin and I had a conversation just 2 days ago, and we decided that we're going to do, especially because of the quarantine, and also just be more aware of like what's happening in the world, what's happening around you, and how it's affecting you personally, but even sometimes how it's impacting your relationship. Calvin and I are both like on the go kind of people. So we've been struggling having to stay inside the house.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to ask you about that actually, of just like, what's it been like as a couple trapped in the house? I am not trapped with my person.
Yeah.
I'm trapped with a bunch of kids, but
yeah,
like, how is that? Because I can imagine that being strenuous.
It is, you know, like Calvin and I'm naturally a homebody anyway, and meaning that I work from home, like my Zoom calls, teaching lessons, whatever I'm doing, I do it from home anyway until it's time for me to go out and work with JB, or go to class. But on average, I'm here most of the time on my computer anyway. So that's the part that wasn't, you know, that didn't feel weird to me, but just not having the option to go outside, like not being able to go out for date night as we normally would, or not being able to like just do, like Calvin and I love cooking together. So we go to the grocery store, we buy groceries. I don't want to go to the grocery store in the middle of this madness at all.
Right.
So it's just like, we're doing weekly check-ins on our relationship every Sunday, like weekly.
Oh, wow.
And the reason why is because even though we already do this, like on a more broader span, just recognizing the sensitivity of what's happening right now, our emotions we're just not, one day you could be fine. And then we were looking up symptoms of cabin fever, and Calvin was telling me that lack of motivation, mood swings, these are all like normal things from just being inside the house. So no, it's not like physically daunting, but it can definitely be spiritually and emotionally overwhelming. So for us, like we're trying to make it as normal as possible, recognizing that we don't know how long this will be our new norm. So just having dates inside the house, like taking time away from each other to just do what we would normally do. Because on average, we're not together like every minute of each day all day. So going from like having set aside some time like for yourself, it's still important to do that even though we're in the house. So, you know, like whatever that looks like for Calvin, it may look like Calvin has a clothing brand, so maybe he's sketching the next collection. For me, they may look like I'm hosting 2 training calls today, or I'm working on my homework assignment, or I'm getting ready for NPR, or whatever I'm doing. Like I have to make sure I'm taking that time to myself, so we're not ready to cut each other's heads off, like for no reason at all.
How I like how you said you're doing weekly check-ins. What do check-ins look like for you guys? Because I hear that a lot, and that's something that like I definitely know how to check in with myself, but it's so awkward checking in with other people sometimes. So what does that look like for you?
Honestly, so Calvin and I went to premarital counseling, which was amazing. Oh, I am like, this is so crazy because I was completely against it in the beginning. I didn't want to go. And I remember Calvin like kind of like looking at me in the car saying like, why don't you want to go? And I was just like, what do we need to go to counseling for? Like we have God, we have each other, like it doesn't make sense. And I had to check myself because I was like, no, that's exactly the wrong mentality to have about counseling. And I told him, I apologized to him because I said, I've got this mentality from my parents. And sometimes we just kind of like hear something and we run with it when it's people that we love that are saying it, and we don't really have our own understanding of that thing or try it out for ourselves. So in counseling, we learned the importance of just maintaining and checking in on each other, you know, to make sure the other person feels like, you know, they're getting what they need, because our needs are sometimes in relationships changing. So it's important to like not assume anything, but always talk about everything. So for us, when we're checking in, we just kind of talk about highs and lows throughout the week. So like maybe this week our focus was communication, and it's not always like a bad thing. Like sometimes we're just checking in and say I love you, and this week like our communication was on point for X, Y, and Z reasons. And then sometimes it'll be like, when this happened, I really didn't like this. Like, what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen this way again? Because Calvin and I both are how do I say this? We're very mindful people, and we're very thoughtful people. And Calvin always says that loving me is like, it's an act of service. Like, and me loving him is also an act of service. So whenever you get in a relationship, like, and you desire to be married, in that road to marriage, it looks different for everyone. But one thing I think that looks the same amongst healthy couples is understanding that act of service. Like, if you're paying attention and you're being mindful and you're thinking about what that person needs and wants, and you want to put a smile on their face or whatever the case is, like, you're acting in that way. And if they're doing the same thing and they're mirroring that behavior, then everybody gets what they need out of the relationship. And this has nothing, I want to make this very, very clear. Sometimes people get in relationships and think that the other person is supposed to make them whole. That's not what I'm saying. No. Like, that's the opposite of what I'm saying, because you have got to have you on lock.
Yeah.
Calvin says it all the time. I am so self-aware. Literally, there will be days I could wake up and say, like, the craziest thing about myself, and Calvin will be like, wow, like, how did you even, like, articulate this? I'm like, because I noticed this week I was doing this and I was doing that, and I shouldn't have been doing that because I was feeling this way, maybe for these 2 reasons, etc. Yeah. But you have to be whole, like, by yourself in order for it to, you know?
Yeah, because if you're not whole by yourself, you're then going to be, you become emotionally needy when you're not whole by yourself, and not in a way that's like, and it gets painted as you're a bad person, or like, oh, that bitch is crazy. And it's like, no, like, that person doesn't know how to fill up their own love tank. So they're pulling on everyone around them because they're deficient, and it's like a drowning person just pulling on anything for help, you know? And you have to know how to fill yourself up to this level where it's like, okay, I'm good. I'm at like 98%, and like anything I get after this is just topping off the little bit of the cup and making it full over, you know? It's because if not, then I definitely agree, that's a doorway to disaster. I did want to touch on Watch Her Win, because I really like that, and I like the name. It's catchy one. I'm really I like catchy names, and I like the name. But I also like the concept behind it, and I wanted to just kind of talk how that came about for you and your journey, and how you found that purpose, and just kind of what you're doing with it.
Yeah, so I would say about 4 years ago, I was sitting in my aunt's car in front of my mom and dad's house, and I was just having a conversation with her, and I felt very broken. I felt like I was losing at everything, Simone. I didn't feel like my career was where I thought it would be. It was my first year after college, so I thought, I assumed I had to have everything together. I was like, I don't have my own house yet. I don't have the job that I thought I would have yet. I'm not in a relationship. Everything just felt like the odds were against me, and I felt like
all your boxes weren't getting checked.
Nothing was checked. I felt very empty, and I remember bawling, crying in the car. I was bawling, crying in the car. My auntie Donna, shout out to her, and I pulled out my phone, and in my phone, back to manifestation. I'm a writer at heart. Like, I've been writing my entire life. So I have a notepad in my phone, and I wrote down Watch Her Win months prior, right? So I really didn't know at what point, I didn't know what it meant, Simone. I didn't know if I was going to sell t-shirts that said Watch Her Win. I didn't know if it was going to be a sticker on my computer. I didn't know if it was going to be, like, I had no idea what would become my personal brand until that very moment. And I said, even though I feel like a loser right now, I'm still winning, because my mindset is a winner. So despite what everything looks like around me right now, I recognize that my current state is not where I'm going at all. It's just where I am right now. And sometimes you meet people like in one chapter of their lives, and you kind of like judge them, and you write them up like, oh, they're not going to be nothing. And I never do that, because I always say that's whack, because you're meeting them in chapter 2. But then if you were to meet them 2 years later in chapter 4, you would be trying to be their best friend. So,
no, Wow, that's real that you touched on that, because I've definitely been thinking about that lately, even just with like myself in terms of my journey. And I feel like I definitely, like, something I'm working on is I want to be less judgmental. Like, I don't think I'm a judgmental person. I don't get called a judgmental person often. I think I'm quite, like, as far as people go, I'm not that, you know what I'm saying? I'm more on the low side. But even still, I feel like I catch myself having these moments of being judgy, where it's really more like a defense mechanism of like, I feel like this person's gonna judge me, so like let me be the first to judge, in a sense. And I was thinking about this, I was kind of just meditating on this of like, you know, I think that's definitely something I picked up more so as a kid and an adolescent. And what's so interesting about it is when I even think about my own journey and how different I've been from a teenager to when you and I met, to who I was after that, to who I am now, to who I'm going to be a year from now. It's like such a disservice to do to yourself when you write people off because of where you walked in that, like what chapter you walked into in their life. And I think that when, you know, doubling back to discernment, it's important to be discerning about how you said timing, you know, what fits for you in your life in this moment in time. But also and especially when it comes to relationships, being fully like, just being able to kind of go through phases, right? Because as you said, it is a lifetime. And, you know, you can walk in on somebody's chapter when it's really struggling and they're not themselves. And you know what I mean? And then you can come back and be like, oh, wait, like me and this, I've seen that happen so much in my life, for people that I thought at first at like 17, 16, 18, like there's no way me and that person are ever going to connect. Like we are not, like, we're not going to be friends. We're not going to get along that well. Like, I think our energies kind of clash. And it's like, now I double back and I'm 26 and it's like, oh my gosh, that person's really cool. Like,
no, it's true.
We get along. This is cool, you know? But I've only had those like, oh, cool, like, oh shit moments, because I've been able to open myself up and tried consciously to move away from being less judging. But like, people, I think sometimes there's a very fine line between being judgmental and being discerning. And I think that that's kind of how you said, you know, life is about balance. I completely agree with that. And I think it's that balancing act of like, I'm walking, like understanding where you're walking in on people, and then also understanding of like what isn't for you.
And I think the thing that helps me to understand one over the other is mindset. So it's mindset. It's not, if I meet you and you don't have a car, you don't have a house, you don't have, you know, all the things that seem to be what you should have, materially speaking, but your mindset has a plan that I believe, and there's actions in your day-to-day that shows me you're fulfilling that plan. That's more important to me, because the other stuff can come, you know, but the mindset, that paradigm shift, that's much, much harder to see.
Oh yeah.
You know, so I think going back to watch her win, I felt like a loser, but I knew I wasn't one, because my mindset was still set on fulfilling my purpose and doing whatever it took to get there. I knew I was going to get there. So I think for me, when I was saying watch her win, I was referring to myself. It was kind of like a double entendre, because I was like, I feel like I'm losing, but I'm still a winner. So watch her win, like watch me in this season of losing in my life so that you can see me win. And then I started to incorporate other women, because it's really important to me for women to win holistically. I think sometimes we put too much emphasis on one thing. Like, we'll talk about relationships and we'll talk about God, but we won't talk about finances. We won't talk about giving back to our communities. We won't talk about being a mom. Like some people don't have kids, but desire to have kids. Like I feel like we don't have enough safe spaces for those cross conversations to happen.
Yeah.
So I definitely wanted to make sure, and I can only talk about my life experiences because I'm one person, but when I add you and I add other women, now we're diversifying those conversations. And that's what I feel like people need to hear, because ultimately, I always say this all the time, people don't tell the truth. People are not honest. So I'm not one of those people who forget or who will forget what it was like to be balled up in a corner in a situation.
Yeah.
I remember what that felt like. You know, I know what that feels like. I know what it does to you mentally. And I think sometimes you only see the end. You're like, oh, now Quee is engaged. Oh, now Quee's getting a doctorate. Oh, now Quee's an investor. Oh, now Quee's an entrepreneur. Like, no, honey, let me tell you what happened before I got to this place, because it's a whole whirlwind, and there's probably more things that we have in common than not. So that's really why Watch Her Win is so near and dear to me. It's really just only beginning. Watch Her Win is like my personal brand, but I have a desire to evolve that into Watch Us Win, which is my investment. So essentially, I'm a Forex investor and I'm a Forex trader and educator. So I teach other people how to trade foreign currencies right from their cell phones. So the foreign exchange market has been around for over 500 years. But when I think about, and more specifically, normalizing minority wealth is my focus. I think that we don't have the right information, you know? Sometimes the information is given to us very late. So it seems like it's just super delayed. And it seems like everything is scary or a scam or whatever the case may have been. And I think it's just lack of knowledge ultimately. So I'm thankful that I took a leap of faith and I'm sticking my head out there so that people can know, like, I'm a person with integrity. So I've done my due diligence, I've done my research, and I wouldn't steer you in the wrong direction. And ultimately, understanding that research is important. Like, the foreign exchange market has been around over 500 years, but people like you and I were not able to participate without having at least $50,000 to $100,000. So now, and I believe it was 2010, where I'm a retail trader. So I believe it was in 2010 that it became legal for retail traders, like regular people walking down the street, to participate in the market. So Christopher Terry, the CEO of I Am Mastery Academy, he decided to create a business where he teaches newbies how to trade, like from, 18 and up or whatever. And I just took advantage of it. Ultimately, for me, I just knew that my back was up against the wall. Ultimately, I wasn't getting any jobs and I needed to do something, but I just didn't know what. And this was the first time my money has ever worked for me. I've always worked for my money. I've always clocked into my job and gotten paid for it, but I've never put numbers into my phone and the money multiplies. So that was super powerful to me. And I think that me having a platform to teach people, not saying that you should quit your job, but just having an additional source of income is definitely something that I think we should be more open to receiving information about, for sure. So
I think I definitely agree with you. Multiple sources of income is important, and I think for particularly minority communities, that's not even minority. I think for pretty much all middle class and down,
I'm glad.
For everyone middle class and down, that's a very foreign concept of having your money work for you, which is why I think it's so interesting. I definitely looked at the links you sent me and stuff, and because I was interested, well, I was like, okay, I want to know more about every avenue that there is to gain those multiple streams of income, and I love how with Watch Her Win, how you're incorporating this idea of wholeness and on every aspect, because particularly when it comes to women, I feel like we have this, I don't know, I won't even say society, because I think that we do it to each other and ourselves. This thing of not allowing each other to be multidimensional and not allowing ourselves to be multidimensional and not focusing on us as these whole individuals. We focus on ourselves and other people as just moms, just sisters, just a wife, you know, we focus on, you know, I hear many people say that balance doesn't exist. And while I do agree that a perfect balance doesn't exist, I do believe that there is an art in life of organizing your priorities in a way that it is serving you, and that you're completely honoring your whole self and your whole being and your whole purpose. Because, you know, there is this kind of, with everybody in society, this very linear way of thinking of like, you have to focus on one part of your identity at a time. You know what I mean? Like, you have to focus solely on getting money, and like, don't you dare try to go get education and husband at the same time. Or you have to focus solely on education, and like, husband and money can't be involved in that, because you know, how will you complete that doctorate if husband and money are involved, or, you know, or creativity or anything. So how, I want to know for you, because you do seem to have kind of got your mojo going with your balancing act. How do you balance your life, and how have you found a way to, not even have you found a way, how has Forex and these things that you're doing helped you gain that balance, and then how help you spread it to other people?
Yeah. So I love what you said about being multidimensional and how it's not always the most supported topic by, you know, us amongst each other, but then also in society in general. It's a very hot topic. And I couldn't agree more. I think sometimes I was definitely one of those people that were told that me moving to California and pursuing a doctorate at Pepperdine, knowing that Calvin was currently living in Los Angeles was not a good move for me, that I wouldn't finish, that I would probably get married and have a kid and not finish the degree at all. And it was very discouraging. And what it did for me mentally and emotionally was it just helped me to better identify that it wasn't about those people. You know, like, if God has given me this vision and God can help me get through it, even if I did get married, even if I did have a baby, to me, it was nothing wrong with that. I think sometimes we don't celebrate that fullness enough. Not really, and I'll be honest, for myself, I wouldn't be the best wife and I wouldn't be the best mom if I couldn't do those other things.
Yes.
I wouldn't, because I would just feel very, very claustrophobic. I would feel very caged. And I told this to Calvin maybe like a few months ago. I was like, the best thing that God could have ever done to me was say no to all those jobs I thought I wanted. Because had I done that, I would have gotten myself in a routine that I probably would not have loved. Now I have myself in a life that I adore. I'm so thankful for it. And I think for me, my money works for me. So me building my team and me adding new investors and me teaching them how to trade, I get to like get my teaching things out, because I love teaching. Like, I love helping people, and I love teaching. I thought I was going to be a college professor.
I remember that. I remember, did you want to be a writing teacher or writing professor?
I did.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think I probably still will, like, be like an adjunct professor at some point, but I get to do that. But I love music. So I get to manage JV. We get to talk about social media management. We get to talk about your NPR audition tape, and we get to do those things. But then I get to also be a wife, and like think like a wife and prepare to be a mom. And I don't think that I would be my best self if I was just labeled one of those things and not all of those things. Because all of those things bring out a different part of me.
That's, oh my God, that's something I struggle with all the time. That's like so real, because it's so easy to get sucked into like one thing, and just constantly, you know, reminding myself and also the others in my life that like, I can't just be whatever I am to you. Like, even with Justin, my son, who's currently banging on my door, like, just, I mean, even explaining to him, like, you know, like, mommy's your mommy, but mommy is a person, because like, if I'm not also a person, I'm not a good mommy to you. Like, I can't be a great mommy if I feel like I'm drowning as an individual, or just completely not existing as a whole human outside of you. Because the truth is, you know, life moves in phases, and as we see with this, you know, virus, jobs that you've had forever can disappear, routines that you've had forever disappear, loved ones die, titles go away, you know, it's kids get older and grow up and don't want to hang out with you and want to go be with their friends and go off to college and get lives of their own and all these things. So it's you know, it's I feel like a lot of times when we find ourselves in these moments in life where we feel so like lost and spun around and are kind of like, oh my God, how did I get here and what happened? A lot of those times it's not that we lost ourselves, it's that we just didn't honor the multidimensional being that we were. And so it feels like we lost something because like, yeah, you were so focused on this one aspect of yourself and now all these other aspects got lost, which is why I'm always just so big on like pressing people trying to find balance, even though I know that it's no perfect balancing act.
It's so important.
Just striving for it, and it's the act of striving for it in itself keeps you very conscious of all the little bits and pieces that make up you and your happiness, because even like a relationship, happiness has to be maintained. I wanted to, before we kind of wrapped up, I did want to touch on a little bit more on your Forex team and moving into the Watch Us win and just kind of what that's all about, and because I'm curious.
So I became an investor about a year ago, and this is a really funny story. So I learned about Forex 2 years prior by our friends Malcolm and Brittany Garrison. Shout out to BG. I learned about it and I was completely on board. But when I called Calvin, he was not. I was like, oh, Calvin, we should invest in Forex. We should really start thinking about investing. Let's just not do the Chick-fil-A thing at the time. We wanted to purchase a Chick-fil-A, but we realized that even though I think it's like a $10,000 fee or whatever, it's very difficult to become a franchise owner of Chick-fil-A because the percentage is so small. So I said, the likelihood is very small, so we'll probably not be able to pursue this. And then the capital that we needed to do everything else, we just didn't have. It was like real estate, very expensive. What else were we thinking about doing? Like we looked into several other franchises. We just didn't have the money. So essentially I was like, we don't have that, but we do have, at the time it was $225 for the initial investment. I was like, we have $225 to learn this skill, but we don't have thousands of dollars to pursue another business venture. So ultimately, you know, a year later, I left Calvin in the dust and I was like, I know you didn't want to do it 2 years ago, but I'm going to do it this time. And I really just took a chance on myself. And what Forex has done for me is completely changed my mind about finances. Because as we know, like 78% of the world live paycheck to paycheck. To me, that number is way too high. And it's really scary because considering the times that we're in right now with the pandemic, I recognize there are so many people who are hurting, who are waiting for a stimulus check, who are waiting for government assistance when they could have been in a better position financially, they had the knowledge of knowing they had other options. And I think for me, you know, it's not about a race or like a competition. It's just about the information being given to whoever needs to hear it and can benefit from it. And for me, I believe that the world is the classroom and that all of us should be looking to learn every single day. So if you don't want to learn more about multiplying your finances, that's definitely something you want to think about, because if anything happens, I'm not talking about, and more specifically, I want to really touch on investing, because we talk about savings a lot. We talk about spending a lot, but we don't talk about investing a lot.
Yes.
And what happens is the only way you can save money is if you have income. But what happens when the income stops?
Right.
How can you save if there's no money coming in?
You know, that's something I always say so often when people talk about like, you just need to save. I hear this all the time and it like blows me as a single mom when I'll hear people be like, all you need to do to make this much money to do this is you just got to save 70% of your income. And I'm like, thank you, jackass. If I had 70% of my income to save, I would be doing that. But I have something called kids. So like, that's not an option. And I think that's kind of, that triggered me to get so interested in investing and to start investing in different ways for myself, because I'm like, dude, income isn't always stable. It's not always there. And it's not always, you can't really, even having a job, you can't be relying upon that, you know? And it's like people talk about savings, but savings don't really grow. And you have to have money up front to have savings.
Exactly.
You can't, you know, you have to have money up front and you have to have no expenses up front and money up front to have good amounts of savings, or a way to have drastically low expenses. And it's just not realistic for so many American families. It's just absolutely unrealistic. A lot of people have expenses that they can't, for the life of them, lower, because it's not an expensive, like, I like to eat out and spend $100 on food a week. It's an expensive, like, I live in an expensive ass area and like I literally don't have money to move. So here we are.
It's such an important point, because I think sometimes our conversations, especially in the minority community about finances, is very counterproductive. And I think it's because of, it's several reasons, but we're all cutting this pie in a different way. So for me, the foreign exchange market is the largest financial market in the world.
Yeah.
The world, Simone, meaning nothing is bigger than this. So in my mind, I was like, if I have a chance to participate in this market now, why would I not, you know, try my hand at it? There's literally $6.6 trillion a day being exchanged in the foreign exchange market a day, not a week, not a month, a day.
Right.
So to put that into perspective, it's larger than the stock market. It's larger than Super Bowl Sunday, the amount of money that's made on that day. Like, it just gets really, really crazy, just to think about, wow, if I just tap into this and take just a small piece of the pie for my family, I'll still be good. And I also think that, you know, sometimes the level of fear is so high because we all, as humans, just fear the unknown. So when you hear about trading in the foreign exchange market, it seems very complex. And I'm not saying that it's easy, but it's simple. Yeah. And just having an understanding that I'm going to join this investment group with people who are already doing it. So I have a mentor. You know, I'm not on an island by myself. And, and to really like put a smile on my face, I was looking at some numbers, and the investment group has grown, Trade House Investment Group, over 30,000 members in the last, I think, over like a year and a half span. Wow. And a lot of them are very young. And it's really inspiring to see, because there's definitely a generational divide sometimes when talking about this, because, you know, just think about regular things like social media and Facebook. Our parents are like, what is this? Like, I can't listen. What's happening on social media? And you're like, Mom, it's just a phone, just an app.
Yeah. Like, or even like social media marketing to people of our generation, it's super intuitive because we've grown up marketing ourselves on social media. Whereas to like the older generation, they're like, what? Explain this to me, because it makes no fucking sense. Yeah. You're like, you just do the ad and you just do that, and then you look at the insights, and they're like, what? And it's like, yeah, it's definitely, I agree.
I think it's the same for trading. I think that the reason why I was not afraid to do it, but when I told my parents, they were like, no, don't do it. You don't know anything about this. They didn't even Google it. They didn't do any research. And I was like, guys, we have got to stop. At some point, you have to ask yourself the question, did I do research? Did I look into this? Like, and then the deeper you dig, the more you'll realize that, which is why I always start off by saying this. We were not privy to this information before.
That's what I was gonna say. I'd never even heard about like I've always known about, like, you know, stocks, and you always hear about stocks and real estate. You know, I was introduced to the stock market very vague, very rough, but like, you know what I'm saying, I saw my grandfather trade as a little girl, and he'd tell me, okay, come do this, or wake me up early as shit when we were out of the country, like, we need to move my money, like, you know. So I had a little bit of stocks, but the foreign exchange market, while I've had foreign currencies in, you know, I've seen foreign currencies in my whole life, you know, I've never heard of the foreign exchange market until kind of stumbling upon your page. I'd heard of like different Forex companies, but there was no background on like what's actually going on. So I was just like, okay, like this sounds like another what was it called? there was one when we were like that everybody used to do, I remember. And it was
I know for sure you should be here. I wasn't a part of it, but I remember seeing all these signs on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. It was like, you should be here, you should be here. And I believe they were like selling some kind of like vacation package or something. Like,
yeah, I
it was.
I remember there was something people used to, your friends used to bring you to fake meetings. They'd be like, yeah, come to this event, and it would be a meeting with Little Caesars Pizza. Yeah.
I'm so happy you're saying that right now, because this conversation will kind of like disband all of the scam thoughts and people say,
Yeah.
hear me when I say, with those things, you're selling something. You're selling some kind of product. And I think when we're educating about the foreign exchange market, it seems so abstract because people are like, I can't sell you a market. The market exists. Even if you don't decide to become an investor with I Am Mastery Academy because of their educational tools, you can do trading. You can trade in the Forex market now by yourself. You know, you just have to learn how to do it. The reason why I partner with I Am Mastery Academy is because they have have over 20 years of trading experience. So I didn't want to waste my time or my money figuring out by myself when I can go learn from someone who already knows how to do it. It's kind of like asking a teacher how to be a doctor.
Or like paying for a mentor. People pay for mentors all the time. People aren't hip to that. A lot of great mentors are paid. They're paid for mentors. That's their job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's important. And I think like with any subscription, you don't get Netflix for free, but continue to watch it for a whole year. You know, like you have to pay for that. So it's an investment. I'm always using the word it's an investment, but it's really an investment in yourself. For me, I have invested in this market and I can, you know, see my subscription leave my account with a smile on my face because I've already made it back. Like I'm using Forex to pay for Forex, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, in 2 years from now, my finances will be in a whole different tax bracket, probably a year from now, at the rate that we're going. But the point is, I would not be there if I didn't take this step. You know, take that leap of faith and decide like I'm gonna make my money work for me, and I'm gonna try this. I already know what it's like to work for money. Let me try to see what it's like to make my money work for me. I go to bed, trade, and wake up in profit. Never experienced that in my life.
With the virus, you know, COVID-19, the Rona, with the Rona in town. What is kind of like, what's been the climate with Forex? Because I mean, stock markets have been, you know, everybody's stocks on sale, which is great. But how is the foreign exchange market impacted by this? Because that's something that like I'm very interested in understanding. I kind of understand how the stock market and real estate are going to be impacted by this, but the foreign exchange market seems to be kind of not isolated, but its own little bubble.
It 1000% is. This is the biggest difference. So prior to the pandemic, during conversations, during Forex informationals, we would always get this question from people like you, potential investors who just want to know. And we would always say that the Forex market cannot crash. The stock market, however, can. This is what I mean. Stock market can hit zero, which is what it did, and it crashed. And people were heartbroken. One of our millionaire mentors lost $450,000 that day the stock market crashed. However, the only difference that happened in the Forex market, we stopped buying currencies and we moved into a bearish market, meaning now we're selling them. That's the difference. So we're still profitable, even though the pandemic is happening, but the stock market is not. And I always like to say that Forex is pandemic proof. It's recession free. Because there's always going to be currencies. Like if you've ever traveled outside of the country.
Okay.
If you've ever, that's why people were like so confused. Like, how are they still trading?
And so it's literally the buying and selling of currency. So like for example, I went to Cuba a few months ago.
Exactly.
And like I exchanged, you know, my our like taxi driver, he was like, don't exchange your money at the currency exchange. You take a 13% to buy your American dollars. He's like, exchange it for me for a 1-to-1. So it's basically like, if I'm getting this, if I'm trying to visualize in my head, it's a retail trader is basically like my taxi driver saying, let me buy your American cash for Cuban dollars, and I'm going to do it at this rate. So you guys,
with more technical analysis.
yeah.
So to go back to your first question, with retail traders, there's 3 kinds of analysis. So we're looking at technical analysis, like we're looking at charts, but then we're also looking at fundamental and sentimental analysis. So fundamental analysis is referencing the news. So like what's happening in the news, how is it going to affect the trades? It just means that we're either going to buy or we're going to sell. Now, I just told you that because of where the market is right now, it's really bearish. So we're just buying, but it's not in the sense of like taxi driver to person, but more so in the sense of like price action going up or down. That's what we're looking at.
So like if you guys were like, okay, I get it. Okay, that makes sense. So like in that scenario, more so like the place he told me not to exchange my money at, where it's more so like okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Exactly.
So it dang, that's super interesting. So basically you guys aren't too much affected by this because it's not like stocks, which are stock prices are relevant to rich people's attitudes or feelings about the stock. Like stock prices are relevant to like, today I feel this way about, I mean, not, that's very basic, but I mean, so, but what is, so Forex, how is the foreign exchange market, what is the sentimental analysis based on in that market, like that kind of stops it from being quite as volatile, which it makes sense though that it's not that volatile because countries' currencies, like if a country's currency is super volatile, that's super bad for the country and their economy, and you know what I mean, and that's how you have, so that makes sense.
That's how the news affects our trading, because so we have our technical analysis means I'm looking at the charts, which is not hard to do, but I'm looking at the charts and I'm seeing what story is the market telling to me in a technical way. That means I'm looking at swing lows, swing highs, I'm looking at price action, I'm looking at the candlesticks, etc. Then when I move over to fundamental analysis, now I'm checking the news. What is the news saying? What's happening in US? What's happening in Japan? What's happening in Cuba? What's happening in Puerto Rico? I'm looking at that. But then when I go over to sentimental analysis, that's a more emotional and like I would say like emotionally driven part of the trading experience, but you get that sentimental analysis when you've been trading with that pair for a long time. And you can kind of start to see the trends a lot easier, and you're now able to make an informed decision as a trader with trading experience. That's what I mean by sentimental analysis.
Okay. How long did it take you to like start learning about the foreign exchange market before you started seeing it really work for you? Because with anything in life, there's a time period where you're just putting in work and you're not seeing results. And then you break this kind of glass ceiling and you like bust through and you're like, oh my God, the fruits of my labor have now come to fruition. So how long was that for you, just to kind of give people an idea?
So with the way that our business model is set up, we have an earn while you learn system. So I started seeing profit a week in the business.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we have a demo account where you're trading with your fake money, but then we have a live account where you're trading with your real money. So I always say like the demo account will be like your dress rehearsal, and the live account is like the actual performance. So the reason why it's an earn while you learn system is because before you're able to understand like, okay, Arquillia, I understand this is why X, Y, and Z happen in the market, you're going to get those trades sent to your phone from master traders who've already done the hard work for you. It's kind of like copying off the smart kid in school. Like you're copying these trades and you're pasting them into your phone to be profitable. And then as you get on the trainings with me, because I'm like an educator, once you get on those trainings, now you're starting to see the rationale. And before you know it, you'll be your own signal, meaning you'll be able to call your own trades and you'll be able to do it in your own timing, you know, without the help of anyone else. So that's where I am in my journey at this point. I can call my own trades. I don't have to like wait for the millionaire signals, but I still use those as well. So when you're coming into the business, it's an earn while you learn system on purpose, because we recognize that people just simply don't, know what to do or how to do it. So I love that about the system, because that really eases people's minds a little bit, and it helps them to recognize you're not on this limb by yourself. You have help the people that are master traders and have done this for years and years and years. So yeah, that definitely it definitely makes it a lot easier to understand and to see, you know, that positive reinforcement quicker than you would have thought you would have if you were just like on YouTube figuring out by yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think a lot of times people quit stuff because, you know, it's hard to keep going at something when you don't see results. It's just like, it's like human nature a little bit.
No, it's true. Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I did want you to just let the audience know where they can find you and how, if they want to get involved with your Forex team or reach out to you about that, or just watch her win, where can they find you and how can they get involved?
Perfect. So you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram at Watch Her Win, Facebook, Arquillia Burks. So ARQUILLIA BURKS. And I also, when you go to my personal Instagram page and Watch Her Win, there is another page in my bio, Win House, and you guys can see my investor and educator journey with Forex. So just send me a DM and I'll definitely be able to get you on a Zoom call and get you started.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much.
Simone, thank you so much for thinking about little me.
This was amazing. This was a great conversation. And like, no, when I've been watching what you've been doing with Watch Her Win for like a little bit now. And I definitely was like, the vibe and everything. I was like, I want to bring this because I think it's so important to just, something that I've really learned in my journey and like kind of just identifying as a healer and as somebody who's called to healing. There's something really, really, really amazing and powerful about when people come together, and particularly about when women come together and when they share what they've learned and they share their journey and they share how they got to places and what they've triumphed through. I mean, like, there's something so magical and powerful about that anytime somebody stands out to me of like, have that, like, I'm really big on that because it can be so impactful. You know, you never know, to like somebody else's life. And it's interesting to see how like our personal journeys and just kind of like following those little inclinations do end up being so impactful to other people's lives.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this because this was really great. I'm definitely gonna check out the Forex stuff. Like, I'm gonna check it out because now that I'm like, you know, when you first sent me the links, I definitely went and looked at it and everything. Yeah. And then I kind of like did a little research like on Google of like, okay, what is this foreign exchange market? How does this work? So like
a prospect call that's gonna happen tomorrow at 12 Eastern Standard Time. So if that changes, I can definitely I'll text you.
Yeah, text me that information because I would actually love to just maybe sit in on that and just like, I'm always interested in learning about new things, and that's definitely intriguing, especially since you're somebody that is doing it actively and like, because that's something that I'm so big on. I think I like how you touched on earlier with saying how the conversation is somewhat toxic when it comes to money, especially in the Black community, right? Because you either have this conversation of like, there isn't one, or like either the conversation isn't happening or the conversation that is happening is very superficially based. And one thing I notice a lot is somebody who is in the business of doing business by herself or, you know, on her own, in a sense, you run into so many people who are entrepreneurs, but like, you can't show me no results. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and they'll tell you, you know, look at this Ferrari I got, and like, look at all the shit I have. And it's like, dude, I know in real life you rented that from somebody using a fucking credit card or scammer money. And like, it's so to have somebody like you who's like, I can show you like my life and how I did it, and like, these are my results, and like, you know, that definitely makes it more real.
I love that you said that because, you know, I always thought if I wasn't going to go into the arts and pursue acting again or singing, I would never see this kind of money in my bank account. And I also thought that if my husband to be or my kids doesn't bounce a basketball or throw a football, we won't see this kind of money. The first time that I saw a wealthy Black person that did not do either one of those things, he was an investor. His name is David Imanitia. Please follow him on Instagram. And I'll send you the link as well. But he is a Chairman 500 in the business. So that you'll have to get on a prospect call to see what that means.
Yeah.
But just understanding that and just knowing that, it changed my life forever. Because I said, if I can impact, because that's really what it's about. The more people I impact, the more money I make.
That's very true. And that's just what that
impact, the more money. Think about Beyonce.
No, that's literally with everything. I always say, don't chase the bag, just chase your purpose. Because I've learned with myself that when I chase bags, I might get the bag here and there, but I burn out and the money doesn't stay flowing. Whereas when I'm chasing my purpose, it's like an extra reward from God. It's like, you're doing what you're supposed to do. I'm going to sustain you, and I'm going to throw a little icing on top, because there's definitely things in my life where I'm like, oh man, I don't even know how I'm going to get that blessing, or where I don't feel deserving or something. But it's like, if I stay within my purpose, God is like, oh girl, you going on that trip. You doing it. You doing what you wanted to do. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's so true though, because it's about impacting and it's about following what you're like called to do, rather than just following dollars, which I also think is interesting that you say that about your Forex career, because I would also say that probably attributes to your success in some way, that it's not for you just about, I'm chasing this bag. It's like, no, I'm having an opportunity to put my skills to use and to really help people and uplift people and really change people's lives and their families' trajectories for years to come, hopefully generations to come.
The last thing that I would really say is that I often use the example of dieting. Sometimes when we're like trying to get our bodies in X, Y, and Z shape, we'll say, I'm going to get on a diet. But in the financial sense, it's like we want to move away from saying diet, but more so lifestyle changes. So I can say that with Forex investing, this is a lifetime decision that I've made. And as the years go by, like learning a skill that pays me for the rest of my life is worth it 1000%. So I'm changing my financial habits by investing and by learning the skill to multiply my money. Like that's exactly how I feel like people should really start to think about finances, not just always wanting to, have a healthy lifestyle change to be healthy, but also holistically speaking, make sure that your finances are healthy. Because it's really, think about how stressful life can be when you just don't have the things that you need.
Yeah.
It's not even like to do, sometimes it's like, you can't do the things that you want because you have to take care of the things that you need first.
Survival mode is, like I say it over and over again, the worst fucking mindset to be stuck in. I've been there, I've lived there, and it's absolutely the worst mind state. Because when you're in survival mode, you can't spend your mental thought process or your energy. You can't spend any energy, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, on fun or passion or purpose or want or desire. Or when you're in survival mode, it's like, no, how the fuck are we going to eat today? And that's what how is this, and that's something I thank God for all the time. Like the feeling, not even feeling, just being blessed in my life to not always have to be in that mode, and being blessed in my life to be, as I see my financial literacy and my manifestation and just my life in general getting better, moving further and further away from being stuck in that mindset and in those times. Because it's really like, it's a lot of people live stuck in survival mode. And that's a really horrible fucking way to live your life. Like, even if it's not about doing like extravagant things in life, it's just a terrible way to live life when you literally can't pull mental energy away from the bare basic necessities to like better yourself or the ones around you. That's how I think a lot of us just stay in this hamster wheel generationally, because a lot of people are grown up with parents who are stuck in survival mode. And when you're stuck in survival mode, you can't find a way out of survival mode. You have to be able to break survival mode, even if it's for a second, to actually start thinking, okay, wait, how can I get out of this? Like, because if you can't even break it for a second, you can't even look at how you said options, you know, you can't even look at the options of stock markets or real estate or Forex or any of these things if you're just stuck in. So, I mean, it's definitely a blessing. And that's very real. And so to be able to afford that opportunity to people to kind of get a moment out of that is huge. And I really do encourage everybody to actually look into foreign exchange and any form of investment. If you can take a break from that, because that shit is crazy. Survival mode is crazy. Like,
it is. It is. It is.
Okay, well, thank you so much. This is great.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Live from the Backseat. I really appreciate you guys. As always, feel free to reach out with feedback. You can comment, rate, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. And please check out the online store at livefromthebackseat.com. The website has tons of cool exclusive content, and I really hope you enjoy it. Have a great day.